Hello there, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I don't want to breach the consensus that's emerged, but I've got to say that my view is this bill brings new powers that are unnecessary and disproportionate and open to abuse, and bring the operatives beyond the rule of law, which is unnecessary. So I've opposed this bill already in the past, and I very much support the amendments to provide some constraints on prospective abuses. I should say at the outset that we all very much welcome and applaud the covert human intelligence sources and the fantastic work they've done over the last few years in thwarting 28 terrorist attempts. But that, of course, was all achieved under the current law with safeguards. And the problem with this bill is it actually removes the law and the safeguards, and therefore I can't really support it. In a nutshell, what this bill allows is new powers, not existing powers, new powers for ministers and officials to confer immunity from prosecution for people to commit serious crimes. And those crimes can be authorised in the name of national security, which we understand, in the name of crime prevention and detection, which, yes, maybe, and in the name of economic well-being of the UK. In other words, there could be crimes committed against anti-frackers, against Extinction Rebellion, etc., etc. So it's much too broadly defined. And what's more, it's unnecessary because we already have statutory powers to authorise criminal acts where necessary, controlled by the third direction policy, enforceable in court, as was found by the MI5 policy, the two-test policy about being necessary in essence and proportionate in terms of public interest. It's claimed also that the Human Rights Act will somehow protect us, but obviously the government came in on a manifesto of abolishing or repealing the Human Rights Act, and there's a review of it going on at the moment. And what's more, during the third direction test case, the government themselves argued that the Human Rights Act did not constitute a basis against the government for a covert human intelligence source offence. So I do not support the bill. I do support the amendments. Amendment 2, to exclude murder, gross GBH, sexual violence, torture, depriving liberty. Even if we get that, of course, ministers can still be empowered to harass political opponents and suppress dissent. I support amendments 1, 5, 12, 14 to improve judicial scrutiny. So we have a report to judicial commissioners and we have tests which are objective, not just subjective, tests which are on the basis of reasonable belief, which can be tested so that judges can rule if an action is lawful and exercise power to remove the authority to commit a crime which isn't reasonable. But of course, the judicial commissioners will be appointed by the Prime Minister. There won't be independent judges, which is again blurring the division between the executive and the judiciary, which is not normal in modern democracies, or any democracies for that matter. Amendment A, to only authorise juveniles and vulnerable individuals where in exceptional circumstances. Well, I'd support that, of course, but I fail to imagine where we should be using juveniles and vulnerable individuals, getting them to spy on their parents or whatever it is, or be in drug gangs. I don't think this is something that we should be authorising, to be quite frank. Clearly, that if we are, there needs to be constraints. And for the reasons I've already outlined, I respect the position of Scotland that, you know, it's not bust, don't fix it. As regards to Amendment 3, the criminal injuries compensation for victims of crimes authorised, well, clearly there should be compensation if there's, you know, crimes authorised which are, you know, disproportionate and unnecessary, and we may never know. In terms of the overall situation, we clearly do have a duty to protect the public. We clearly do have a balance between security and liberty and human rights. And in a democracy, I think we should support these amendments to put constraints on this bill that unfortunately other democracies haven't adopted, and we wouldn't like to see applied in less liberal environments than our own.